Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Ridgid R8698B 18-volt cordless hybrid LED panel light. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up we have the different options for powering the light. First up we have the battery slot. Now the battery slot in this particular light uses the Ridgid 18-volt lithium batteries, and overall they seem to do a fairly good job at powering the light. The battery's locked into place nice and securely with only a minimal amount of looseness or play to speak of. There isn't enough looseness or play to interrupt the power delivery going to the light, and so everything here seems to work just as intended. I will say that I would have preferred having something that the battery slid down into, just to make sure that the battery didn't come out accidentally if you didn't fully insert it into the slot, but that's just a minor personal preference. Now the light also has a second way of being able to power, and that is with a standard extension cord. There are two prongs that are located directly behind where the battery is slotted in, and in order to use a standard extension cord to power this light, you will have to remove the battery. There are two prongs which will allow you to plug a standard extension cord into it. Unfortunately, there is no grounding prong, so the extension cord has a nasty habit of falling free when you are moving the light. But as long as the light is in a stationary position, you shouldn't have to worry about the extension cord falling free. Now my second issue with this particular design is the fact that the slot is rather restrictive on what size head the power cord can have in order to plug the power cord in. Light duty power cords shouldn't be an issue, but if you have a large heavy duty power cord, you might find it difficult to plug it into this particular light. But other than that, everything works as intended, and there is no difference in the amount of lumens that the light produces when you are using a power cord. So other than that, everything gets flying colors and we're ready to move on. Okay, next up we have the base of the light. Now the base of the light is going to feature several different options for hanging and mounting the light. The first option are these two little hooks that are located on the rear of the base and will allow you to hang the light on a cord or on top of some rope. When you are working, say, in a forested area or in a basement and you have a line or rope that has been stretched across an area. Overall, this is definitely a useful feature and will come in handy in a variety of situations. Also, another cool feature would be the tripod mount. The tripod mount will allow you to mount this light on top of a 1/4 inch tripod screw, which means you can use this on top of tripods or on tripod mounting plates that have been attached to the other side of ceilings or walls. So it's definitely a useful feature. The plastic that they used on this particular light is a high quality plastic, and so it should work just fine out in the sunlight or in cold conditions without you having to worry about it getting brittle or shattering. The light is suspended several inches off the ground thanks to the base, and so if you do have to set the light in a small pool of water, say under an inch or so, you should be just fine. Although I still would try to avoid those working conditions if at all possible. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, next up we have the tilting panels on this particular light. Now there are several different ways to tilt this light. You have the main body, and then you have the two side panels. Now the two side panels will fold and unfold from the main body of the light in several different configurations. You can either have them facing the light for transportation to make sure nothing gets scratched, or if you want to have a little bit less light coming out, you can just fold in front of the main panel facing outward, and then you'll have a little bit less light being produced. Although I'm not quite sure why you'd want to do that, you have the option. You can also tilt the side panels to face straight upward, straight backward, straight downward, while the main light is facing forward or up and down. Quite frankly, there's just a lot of different options that you can have with this particular light, and so if you're working on a large project with multiple people but you only have one work light, you have the option of, well, using your one work light pointed at multiple directions at once in order to illuminate multiple projects at once. Quite frankly, this is a very versatile light. I really do like the overall design here, and I don't really have any major complaints. I also like the fact that the main body has a tensioning screw, so if the main body of the light does become loose over time, you can always tighten it down and have it be, well, tight again. Quite frankly, there really isn't any major downsides to this particular design, and I can't think of any major ways of improving it. So with that being said, everything here passes with flying colors, and we're ready to move on. Okay, next up we have the carrying handle. Now the carrying handle is located at the top of the tool and is made out of plastic. The plastic is the same plastic that the base is made out of and is very strong with zero looseness or play to speak of. It is completely smooth with no texturized pattern, which is going to make it easy to clean, but unfortunately it also means you're not going to be able to maintain as strong of a grip on it. Now it is plenty large enough for people with large sized hands, and as long as you're not wearing a pair of very thick welding gloves, you're probably going to be just fine carrying this well with a pair of gloves on. So quite frankly, there really isn't much to say other than that, and everything here gets a pass. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the power switch. Now the power switch is located on the top of the front light just behind the front panel and will allow you to cycle through the different modes. The first mode is the highest mode, followed by the second mode, which is medium, and then last but not least the low mode. And then the light turns off. If you press and hold the power button, the light will turn on to its lowest mode, and then if you press and hold again, the light will turn off. If you press the switch directly after holding it for a long period of time, the light will just turn off, so I don't really see the point in holding it to turn off the light after turning it on in that fashion. Quite frankly, I don't really see the point in holding onto the switch at all because you can cycle through all the modes fairly quickly. The switch is made out of high quality rubber and is slightly recessed and is easy enough to find with your bare hands or with gloves on. So there really is no downsides, and everything here gets a pass. Moving on. Okay, last but not least, we have the LED panels. Now, the central panel is comprised up of 39 LED beads on top of a white reflector board, and each of the side panels has 13 LED beads on top of a white reflector board. The covers that go over the board is a transparent plexiglass, which is going to mean that you won't have to worry about shattering and breaking into a million pieces if you drop the tool. And, well, the color that is produced by the light itself is a neutral white color without any sort of a tint in the warm or cool spectrums. Now, the LED beads appear to be of a high quality since I cannot detect any flickering with the camera, so quite frankly, I'm pretty happy with the overall design here. And at the end of the day, it does fulfill my personal needs, and I'm very happy with the amount of light that is produced. This light is capable of producing 3,500 lumens on the highest mode, and on the lower modes, less than that. I'm unsure what the actual numbers are when it comes to less than that, since I don't have an accurate way of, well, measuring the LED or lumens on this particular light. So at the end of the day, everything gets a pass, and I don't see any major issues. Moving on. Okay, now onto the weight. Now, without a battery, the light weighs 2,133 grams, which is about 4.7 pounds. And that is pretty heavy. And when you introduce a 4 amp hour battery, that weight is going to shoot up to about 2,830 grams, which is going to be 6.2 pounds, which is fairly heavy, but considering the build quality and how much light that this produces, I think that's a fairly acceptable range. Okay, let's go ahead and do a quick comparison against, say, another light that's very similar, the Ryobi PCL631B. Now, the Ryobi light is going to be fairly similar, but there are some key differences. One key difference is the fact that, well, the Ryobi isn't nearly as versatile with the directions that you can point the LED panels. You can point the LED panels on the Ryobi to the sides, but you are unable to point them straight upward or downward without the main body of the light also pointing in that direction. And the Ridgid light is also going to be able to produce a higher lumen count at 3,500 versus the Ryobi's 3,000 lumen count. The Ridgid also sits further off the ground, so if you were to set it, say, in a puddle or something, if you're being forced to work in a very damp condition, there's a much higher chance that the Ridgid's going to be able to survive since it's got that base that keeps it up off the ground a little bit further than the Ryobi's base, which has it right against the ground. But then again, the Ryobi has a few things going for it as well. The Ryobi is a much more compact light, which means it's going to be far easier to transport and store than, say, the Ridgid light, which is far larger. So if you look at it that way, each light has its own pros and cons, so it's really going to be up to you and your own personal needs. And there are some similarities between both lights. They both have 3 modes, they both have an AC option, and you can use both, well, with power tool batteries, obviously, as long as they are the brands that they belong with. Ryobi batteries with the Ryobi light, Ridgid batteries with the Ridgid light. And of course, you can adapt batteries over from other brands, but you do that at your own risk, so just keep that in mind. Moving on. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at these lights when they are pointed at the side of a shipping container. Now, in this particular little test, we have the light sitting on top of a portable workbench that is located about 20 feet away from the side of a 40-foot long shipping container at one end. Now, the first light, which is the Ridgid light, is doing a fairly good job at evenly distributing the light across the entire end of the shipping container, and quite frankly, I'm very happy with the performance here. It's definitely a brighter light, and it's going to be producing more lumens, which means, well, in an outdoor scenario or in damp conditions, the Ridgid light is going to be superior to the Ryobi. But the Ryobi isn't that bad either. The Ryobi is also doing a fairly good job at illuminating the shipping container, but because of its lower lumen count, it definitely isn't going to be nearly as powerful or as strong. The Ryobi light has about 3,000 lumens versus the 3,500 lumens, so you can see how it's struggling a little bit more in this particular test. Now, the Ryobi light definitely has the LED beads arranged in a more tight configuration versus the wider layout of the Ridgid LED beads, so you are getting a little bit more concentrated light, but it's not nearly as well evenly distributed or as wide. So honestly, if it was up to me, I would definitely be picking the Ridgid light over the Ryobi light simply because of how it's distributing the light and the fact that I like evenly lit work surfaces. But with that being said, let's move on to a different test. Okay, next up we have a 12 by 20 foot portable shelter. Now, the Ridgid light is doing an excellent job at illuminating the entire interior of the shelter, on its high and medium modes. On the low mode, it's definitely struggling a little bit more, and I would try to avoid that if at all possible, but if you're short on batteries or don't have an AC cord, I can see why you might have to use the low mode. Now, for me personally, the Ridgid is more than powerful enough, but if I need to have something a little bit more compact, the Ryobi doesn't do that bad of a job on its high mode. I definitely wouldn't be using the Ryobi on its medium mode or low mode in this particular lighting situation just because of, well, it's just a little bit dim and it could end up damaging your eyesight if you are, well, using it on its low mode and trying to illuminate this large of a project. But it's going to come down to your own personal needs and situations for each one of these lights. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons of the Ridgid light, and then we'll end the video. And the first pro is 18 volt. 18 volt means that this will work with all your Ridgid batteries, and you can adapt batteries over from different brands via third-party adapter. Just remember, you do that at your own risk. Powerful. This is a very powerful battery operated work light, and this is going to be very useful when you are working in remote areas, and so in my opinion, this is a pro. Tilting panels. The tilting panels allow you to illuminate 3 different directions at once, whereas if you were using another kind of work light, you would need to have, well, 3 different lights. So in my opinion, this is a pro. AC power. Being able to plug an extension cord in the light and run it that way means that you'll be able to free up a battery, and you'll have basically indefinite runtime on your work light as long as you have an AC source nearby. And this is a pro in my opinion. Easy adjust. Having the easy adjust knob on the side means that you won't need to hunt around for a screwdriver or wrench. All you have to do is rotate the knob and you'll be able to tighten it down to get into the position that you need it in. Good base. The base on this light definitely helps prevent this light from tipping over easily and will allow you to suspend the light several inches off the ground. So if you are working in a challenging environment, you will have the ability to protect the light against, say, standing water. And so that is a pro in my opinion. Tripod mount. The tripod mount allows you to mount this in a variety of different situations on a variety of different objects. So in my opinion, this is a pro. Price. Tool only, this light costs $150, which is just too expensive. I purchased this during the holidays and it came with a battery and charger and it was $100. I think it came with a charger. I'm not sure about the charger, but it definitely came with a battery and it was about $100. So in my opinion, that's a far more reasonable price, and if it was still at that price point, it would be very easy to recommend. But it's not, so currently it is overpriced. And the last con would be size. It's a bit bulky. It's not that big of a con, but if it was a little bit more compact, it would definitely be easier to pack away when you were taking it to a job site. But as it stands, it does produce a lot of light, so there are some trade-offs there. And personally, I'm pretty happy with the overall size. I just wish it was a tiny bit more compact. And that's it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this particular light. I really do like this light. It's definitely probably the highest quality light that I've ever owned or reviewed. And I have to say that I don't really find anything to be incredibly irritating or wrong on this particular light. I wish it was a little bit more compact, and the price tag is, well, too high at $150 tool only. But around the holidays, a lot of times it goes on sale, and you can pick it up for about $100 with a battery. So I would definitely wait till then if you can. But when it comes to build quality, it is outstanding, and when it comes to just the usability and the amount of light that it produces, that is also outstanding. So quite frankly, this light comes highly recommended if you can find it at a reasonable price. And that is it for this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. God bless.